be next 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, like I think that they probably. I think there's a fair possibility that they may be trying to set her up to maybe take Pop's place in a couple of years.
That's true.
But it's not to say that if something else comes along, she wouldn't jump at it. But the success that she's had in such a short time, in basically a season and an off season, has brought up Nancy Lieberman, which was very surprising how fast this happened to me. Like, I heard an interview with her about a month ago where she said that she was very proud of Becky Hammon and wanted to follow in her footsteps and felt that she could be a serviceable coach somewhere. And then boom, now Sacramento Kings make her an assistant. And I think that what I want to see play out, and what we may never get to know, is how difficult it is on a female coach in such a male testosterone driven locker room.
Right.
With the fact that those are two respectively attractive women. What jargon are they going to hear? What disrespectful things or what passes and attempts are going to be made at them that could threaten the balance of their career? And they're going to have to walk that line. And I think that it is a double-edged sword that they are relatively or fairly attractive, because I think that they would get less respect if they weren't.
Right.
I think that they'd probably get the short end of that faster. So it's just very intriguing to me.
And you mentioned it before we pressed record that maybe if they weren't as attractive, that they could possibly be overlooked for this opportunity altogether.
Right.
And I'll just add on to that, saying Molly McGrath of the Wildcats movie kind of comes to mind with the, hey, coach, all suited up, ready to hit the field. I don't know if you might have been a little younger than me on that one, but check out Wildcats with Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson. That's an interesting thing. I will only say that it's just kind of, I wouldn't say problematic, but maybe just indicative of the world that we're in, where Becky Hammons is a lot closer to being we mentioned it earlier with the Drake and Meek Mill in the first part of this two-part series, with today's people not being able to handle issues. But the reputations of Muhammad, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Laimbeer not being able to get NBA head coaches or even get on the staffs of NBA teams. It's funny that Becky Hammons could be ahead of them. Well, she is ahead of them, because it's probably a done deal for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and it's probably in all likelihood, it's probably a done deal for Bill Laimbeer too, even though he has some WNBA titles to his name. So really quickly, my number 2 storyline is just going to be Coach Donovan's first year in OKC. What's the health of the foot of Kevin Durant? And can OKC go from being a non-qualifier for the postseason to being a top 3 seed in the West? How do they mix it up with the aforementioned Los Angeles Clippers and then the defending champs? Where do they fall in there? And that's just going to be that's going to have some implications as far as where does KD go moving forward, because we hear all the right stuff with him possibly staying in OKC, but things go a certain way and maybe he's back in Washington. And so there's that, and then there's also the fact that you can weigh in on that on OKC, but there's also the fact that Houston is and you broke this last Hoops and Hops with Ty Lawson going to Houston. I mean, that's a team that's going to be firmly in play in that 1 through 4. That 1 through 4 in the West is going to be a beast.
The West is always going to be in the foreseeable future, it's going to be real tough out there. OKC is very interesting to me because, they matched the deal for Enes Kanter. I think that was important for them to keep him. They need another option to score the ball, particularly from the post. But KD's foot that's a big thing. a guy that big, look, he's not real bulky. He doesn't have a bunch of weight, but it is not unheard of. It's actually very common for 7-footers that have foot problems and lose
Yao
it.
Ming.
Yao. And it's the same, I believe they said it was the same injury that Zydrunas Ilgauskas initially had, and he came back from, but was sidelined for about 3 years initially in the recovery process.
Right.
So I think that's I just think OKC needs to make moves. I don't think they ever put enough around KD and Westbrook. Last year, them taking all those guys from the Pistons and having Enes Kanter, I think was their most complete team, but a lot of those guys are gone.
Right. They've got some rebuilding to do, but I mean, if you do have a 100% Russ and KD, I mean, that's enough for most situations. You know, it may not be enough for the NBA Western Conference, but you know, like we just mentioned, there'll be some reseeding or some difference in how the seeding is handled this year. But I'm just saying, you know, I just enjoy that environment that they have down there, and I just think without getting one last run at them closer to full strength, it'd just be unfortunate for it to end without them really having a second run like they did the year that they did make it to the finals. So that's one thing that I'm keeping an eye on. Really quickly, we're just a little over an hour, so let's get to these last number one storylines that we're looking for in next year's season.
All right, and my last one, I don't know if it's necessarily a storyline. It's something that I kind of wanted to vent about and pay attention to going forward. You had touched on it briefly in a previous pod, the MVP Players Awards. So I watched it, and I was, one, very surprised and disheartened by the lack of quote-unquote famous faces that were there.
That was pretty noticeable, wasn't it?
Look, James Harden, Steph Curry, and Chris Paul. Those were your headliners, but no LeBron, no Anthony Davis.
Yeah, man.
You're missing a bunch of guys.
No Melo either, right?
No Melo. Like, they had Anthony Tolliver presenting awards out there. Okay. And that's a real stretch. And I mean, even in the crowd, like Nazi Muhammad, they did shots of him. They did.
Did you? I hate to jump in on you, but I like this to be really organic.
Yeah.
Did you see Andre Iguodala's face when 2 Chainz was performing?
He was very unhappy. I understand why.
Man, that's what stands out to me the most. Andre Iguodala was sitting there like, man, who the hell is this brother, and what the hell am I watching? That was one thing that stuck out to me. I didn't mean to hijack your point.
The Warriors were well featured, but I think the Warriors were well featured because, one, Steph, I think, is trying to embrace this new image and the face of the league. So
being in the forefront.
Right, he wanted to be there. But then you got Festus Ezeli and Andre Iguodala. Those guys ain't got nothing else to do.
No.
All right. And everybody else that was there, Roger Mason Jr., these are all guys who are pivotal in the players' side of the
players' union.
The players' union.
What about my one dude, Rashard Jennings?
He was there. Why?
Exactly. Hey, but 2 things. One, Allen Iverson with the shorts on. Did you have issue with that? 2, how did you think the reception was to Ray Allen's speech?
So, I think that those 2 speeches in particular, Ray's and AI's, were high points of the broadcast. I don't know if they'll be received as such in this fast-paced, flashy world that the kids are into now, but I think that AI kind of, and I was impressed that he didn't cry. AI is a crier,
right?
And I was ready for that, but he gave you a look into his reality and how he feels like when nobody's there, when he's at his bottom, his kids are there for him, and he talked about how this younger generation has to carry the torch, and then to kind of coincide with that, Ray Allen's whole speech was basically, take a minute and be respectful of the fans, help these kids. You are now their MJ effectively. You need to set the example, show them how they should carry themselves. And I thought, I was just very surprised that it was on BET. I didn't.
That was understand. A major coup. That's a major coup.
Yeah,
for
that's
BET
what you had said
too,
for them to have it. So, and in line with that, that's part of why I'm interested as to how this proceeds, because they sign a 3-year deal with a 4th-year option for them to host that show.
You see what you're getting on Pay Me No Mind, Hoops and Hops.
And I don't think that their ratings were very well for it. And so they have the rights for the next 2 years to deny them to put on any other type of award show, which is very interesting because the next day TNT came out and said that they had plans to do a player award show also. And so if BET owns the rights and basically wants to make it a music gala, because that's basically what it was, because I think it's in theory and in concept a very good idea. I've always thought that the players should have an opinion, a voice. But then I also was very confused because if all of these notable stars aren't there, what is to make me believe that they voted?
Yeah, that was a pretty bad look that there wasn't that solidarity amongst the players. Obviously, even with the participants in the NBA Africa game, CP3 was arguably the biggest name out there. So, I fight this fight, or I have this issue with amongst myself, Reggie and Wood, I guess. When I look at the year that Beyonce and Jay-Z had the add-on segment to the BET Awards, they didn't show up to perform there. The show just all of a sudden pivoted to a concert of theirs, and I thought that was so piss poor. And it's just BET, you can't tell me that 98% of the league didn't grow up on 106 in Park. I mean, the basement people are kind of, Ray Allen might represent that demographic. But, excuse me. This is something like going back to the 60s and the 70s with somebody like the running back from Cleveland, the greatest, Jim Brown. Jim Brown was about trying to take him and some other players kicked around the idea of them taking power of the league. And I felt like the players taking this celebration or award show to BET was kind of very empowering for the Players Association. And like you said, let's do it big like that. And if you take a step back and try to bring in TNT, I don't know if I'd be with that, but I think to our point with the R&B thing earlier, Monica did perform. But I think if you're gonna put the music in there, it's a certain variety of again, that types of music needs to be right, because you do have some 12, 13, 15 year players in there that don't necessarily connect with 2 Chainz up here riding around on that, whatever that contraption is called. And so, maybe it would have been good for them to bring it. We mentioned Rakim earlier. They're probably a little ahead of that. I'm trying to think of somebody they could have brought in besides a Jay-Z or Nas that some of the older school would have connected with.
Wayne opened the show.
Another person that was underdressed. You didn't hit on AI in the shorts.
The shorts. Okay, so here's my thing with that.
We're going to wrap this one up in the next 10 minutes, by the way.
I don't ever expect Allen Iverson to be, like,
formal.
Right. I don't expect him to be top
the proper decorum.
Yeah, I don't ever look for that. It's not... It may not be what I want to see him do, but the reality of it is that's why he's gotten his notoriety. And I appreciate him bringing the hip-hop form to the NBA world, and that's why all those guys look up to him, because he was the first one to do it. So he's never going to change. It was maybe not the best look for him there, but that's who he is. he accepted his MVP award in a do rag and a headband. So, you know,
I guess you when you put it like